Ever thought about getting your life together? Like, how about adopting a pet? That night, the little girl returned to the estate, successfully dodging the not-so-fun Rome folks who wants to get sold again, right? All that was left were Karen, the pastor, the grieving Barbara, and the little girl who just escaped from the Roma winter was knocking, and Karen needed to get that trial to guarantee a potato feast next year. Karen had to plant quickly, and before you know it, snow was covering the land. Food shortages made the little girl sick with pneumonia. Though Barbara had meds, the girl might not survive winter without good nutrition. Barbara proposed growing potatoes, but Karen refused. Meanwhile, in Holt Estate, Durstjinkel heard from the butler that Karen imported some potatoes from Germany. He feared she might actually succeed. He rushed over in the dead of night, filling his cart with leftovers, and Barbara didn't hesitate to bring those leftovers right inside. They hadn't had meat in ages, and Durstjinkel even brought 2,000 crowns for Karen. He hoped Karen would take the money and scram anywhere but here. Looking at that hefty bag of cash made Karen's will waver. But before they could feast on the leftovers, Karen tossed everything back out, even returning the 2,000 crowns to Durstjinkel the next morning. Seeing the little girl in dire straits, Karen reluctantly slaughtered the last goat in the house, even though Barbara pointed out that goats are worth more than potatoes. After a proper feed, the little girl started to recover, and that evening Barbara covered her with all the blankets. The little girl bravely ventured to Karen's room, and soon enough she was back to her healthy self. Everyone barely survived the brutal winter, and finally Karen planted dozens of bags of potatoes. A new flicker of hope began to grow in Karen's heart as the little girl gave her the red-tied stick once more. This time, Karen accepted without a second thought, and the little girl had finally found her place. Just when things were looking up, a hailstorm nearly ruined all their hard work. Karen shouted at the sky in frustration, but lucky for them, hard work paid off. The little girl joyfully called out for Karen from a distance. When Karen and Barbara arrived, they were amazed to see a small green sprout emerging from the ground. Not long after, the king received 80 bags of potatoes sent by Karen, effectively ending decades of failure. The king couldn't be happier, rewarding Karen with a bunch of peasants and a pile of riches, granting her the title of royal surveyor. Family life changed greatly. Karen and Barbara's bond grew, and the girl seemed a true family member. However, Durstjinkel's jealousy grew increasingly intense, and her cousin Elder advised her not to oppose Karen. Durstjinkel slapped her and angrily dragged the maid to the window. What was she even thinking? That night, Durstjinkel enlisted Major Praisler and rounded up a batch of death row inmates from prison. Elder was watching closely. While everyone was peacefully resting, the little girl suddenly woke from a nightmare, prompting Karen to grab a gun and head outside with Barbara. They discovered the horse that had accompanied Karen for years had been killed, and even worse, several families were under attack from wolves. Wise leader suspected foul play, while the wolves sensed fresh blood. The following morning, near the wasteland, Karen found 3 immigrant bodies. She knew Durstjinkel was behind this. Karen arrived at the Holt Estate all by herself, but Durstjinkel denied any connection. Subtitles. Out of sheer anger, Karen immediately drew out her gun, but in the end, reason triumphed over impulse, and she silently departed from Holt Estate. After holding the immigrant's funeral, Elder rode over to find Karen, making Barbara a bit jealous. Though she couldn't stop Karen, Elder revealed that her cousin had hired death row inmates and told Karen where they were hiding. Later that day, Karen found the leader of the immigrants. Some were veterans, and she hoped to rally them for revenge. But the leader blamed the little girl, claiming her darker skin made her the embodiment of evil. If Karen kicked the little girl out of the estate, the immigrant leader promised to help her get revenge. Reluctantly, Karen gave in, but Barbara disagreed. She saw the girl as family. The threat from Durstjinkel and the pressure from the immigrants left Karen with no choice. She found the convent for the little girl where labor was required for food, making the girl tear up. Yet she never blamed Karen. Losing her home had become the norm for her. As she was leaving, she continuously called Karen's name, but Karen never turned back. That night, Karen and the immigrant leader stealthily disguised themselves and crept into the hideout of the death row inmate. Subtitles. The They cleverly eliminated the murderers one after another, including an active duty officer. Only Major Preisler managed to escape, hired the whole estate, and informed Erschinkel about everything. The next morning, Karen returned to the estate, only to find the pastor waiting alone. Barbara had left a note saying she won't be coming back after sending the girl away. Erschinkel was out for blood against Karen, starting to beat her mercilessly. He tossed Karen into an iron cell and ordered his men to boil a few buckets of hot water for good measure. Meanwhile, Barbara disguised herself as a maid and sneaked into Hull's estate, plotting her revenge. Miss Alder lured Erschinkel into her room under the pretense of a marriage alliance, but he knew she just wanted to save Karen. She didn't suspect the wine on the table, but after the drug took effect, Alder quietly slipped out. Just then, Barbara came in. She took out her hidden dagger and stabbed Erschinkel. By the time the guards arrived, it was already too late for him.